Awesome, awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for our November Lunch and Learn, co-hosted by Gigi's Playhouse Nashville and the Down Syndrome Association of Middle Tennessee. Hope y'all are having a wonderful fall, enjoying this awesome, awesome colors outside and staying warm. Just a couple of quick announcements and housekeeping. If you have any questions at all during the presentation today, if you've called in using the app, then the chat feature is available to you to ask those questions, and we'll be sure to get to those. And we'll also save some time for a Q&A there at the end in case anybody has any lingering questions for Sara. And then also, just some other quick announcements. So Gigi's, our spring semester of free programs for kids and adults with Down syndrome. Our spring semester registration will be going live around the end of the first week of December. So if you want to be sure to be notified when that happens, go ahead and go to our website at ggsplayhouse.org/Nashville and make sure you sign up for our email newsletter, because that's where we'll be sending out registration information on that. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Sara Scott with Family Voices of Tennessee, who's our presenter today on the Katie Beckett waiver. So Sara, do you want to introduce yourself and get rolling?
Sure. Hi, I am Sara Scott with Family Voices of Tennessee and the Tennessee Disability Coalition. I work with the Katie Beckett Program since we started our advocacy campaign. I have been the family lead, so I know all things Katie Beckett. I also run the Katie Beckett Family Support Group that we have on Facebook. We have over 800 families now. So we're pretty proud of that. It's a really good place for people to find answers and just figure out what's going on in the program. So let's get started and talk about what is this Katie Beckett thing. First, I'll tell you about who's Family Voices. We're a program of the Tennessee Disability Coalition, and we provide educational and emotional support to families who have children with special health care needs, chronic illnesses, or disabilities. All of our staff have children who have special health care needs, chronic illnesses, or disabilities, which makes us uniquely experienced, we think. We have lots of cool programs. Peers is just for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. Parent to Parent is about being matched with other parents. Voices for Choices is about being trained in advocacy. And our Youth Advisory Council is just for young people. I think their ages are 14 to 24. And they are both with and without healthcare needs and disabilities. But it's a project that we do with the Tennessee Department of Health. So that's been a really neat sort of collaboration we've had going on. I like to include this slide. I don't like to read it, but when you look at things later, if you feel like it's a little bit of alphabet soup and you forget what things mean, you'll have this handy little thing to refer to. So what is a Katie Beckett program? Ronald Reagan was the person who changed the federal Medicaid rules in 1981. If you can believe it has been that long ago. Tennessee, however, was the 50th state to implement this program. Each state has a different type of waiver. Their criteria and their benefits are likely different. Some are restricted to specific diagnosis or service needs, like being on a ventilator. And it's important to note that benefits and services are not transferable from state to state. So Katie Beckett was a real child. She caught a virus and had to be hospitalized on a ventilator. She was there in the hospital for a very long time. And finally, her parents realized that she could receive the same level of care at home for a lesser expense, and it would be better for everyone. So that's how these programs came to be. It provides a pathway to Medicaid services for children who have an institutional level of care, an institution being a hospital, but wouldn't otherwise qualify for Medicaid because their parents' income or assets are too high. So instead, they count just the child's income and assets. Usually, a child has few or none, and the care is always provided in the child's home or community. And the caveat is that it cannot exceed the cost of institutional care or care in a hospital. In Tennessee, our program has been designed with three different parts. Part A are children of the most significant need, and they qualify for institutional care. Part B are children who are at risk for institutional care. And Part C are children who would qualify for Part A, but there are no open slots. This is sort of an ongoing continuous coverage for people who are losing their Medicaid because their income or resources have increased. Oops. But there's no Part A slot for them to move into. So Part A includes full Medicaid coverage as secondary. People are required to keep their primary private insurance coverage. It includes up to $15,000 in home and community-based services, often called HCBS. It has two tiers. Our program is designed with two parts, Tier 1 being the most significant needs, and Tier 2 being a little less significant. So a little different level of care, but they have access to the exact same benefits. There are approximately 300 slots total in Part A. Until this point, they had been waitlisting everyone who qualified for Tier 2. Currently, the waitlist has been eliminated. They made their way through that pretty quickly. And so right now, both tiers are open. Part B is no Medicaid coverage, but up to $10,000 in home and community-based service. Families say that Part B is the most flexible. This slide is a little complicated. This program is complicated, but these are the important things that are different between Part A and Part B that families might want to consider if they had been waitlisted and were considering whether they wanted to stay in Part B or accept that Part A slot. Some people might have originally been Part B, but maybe their level of care intensified. So they might be choosing, do they want to move to Part A to get more services? There are some significant differences. The first being that Part A includes TennCare coverage, but that only works for TennCare providers. Secondly, that there is no availability for the HRA or non-traditional therapy benefit in Part A. That is the most popular benefit in Part B. Also, there is a premium that may be owed for Part A. Many families do have a zero premium, but many families do have a significant premium. So it just depends on the family's income, as well as the cost of their private primary insurance. Some people in Part B don't have insurance at all, whereas in Part A, you're required to keep that private primary insurance. Obviously, there's that $5,000 difference in home and community-based services benefits. And then finally, in Part B, the child's full primary premium is reimbursable. In Part A, only the portion that's offset by the Part A premium is recoupable. Part C is the third option. It's only available for people who are losing their Medicaid coverage. It's just a continuation of their Medicaid coverage. It does not include any other benefits. It's sort of a stay in place. This chart sort of explains the formula for how Part A premiums are calculated. This has been a difficult issue in the program, especially with the people who are transitioning from having been waitlisted in Part B to Part A. They don't show their math, basically. You either get a letter in the mail that says your premium is X, or you get an alert in your TennCare Connect portal. So it doesn't allow you the opportunity to see if the documents that were used to calculate it, are accurate, or if there were any possible errors. We've advocated that they show their math using maybe something similar to the SSI award letters, if you've perhaps seen that. Just a simple chart that shows, the figures that they're using. They use obviously a computer program to formulate their calculations. So this being a new program, there have been many errors, and that's been a little difficult for folks to kind of track down. Secondly, I would comment that one of the sort of many misnomers about this program is that it's not income-based. But as you can see, this is one of the reasons that it very clearly is. One handy thing that they did, if you're wondering how they arrived at determining a child's portion of the family income, is they just decided that they would be real simple and divide it amongst people in the household. So that has been a sort of easier way to parse out the costs of how that was figured. I don't think this has happened yet, but I thought it was important to include. There are some stipulations regarding premium payment for what would happen if a person didn't pay or was late, and how that person might be suspended or disenrolled. I wanted to include this just to compare. The same thing in both sides has different names. In Part A, the plan is called a person-centered support plan, and it's approved by the MCO, or the Managed Care Organization. In Part B, it's called an individual support plan, or an ISP, and it's approved by the Department of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. In Part A, you have a nurse care manager. In Part B, you have a case manager. This has been Another source of confusion, I think, just not just the different terminology, but because different departments and agencies have ownership of different pieces of the program, it's made collaboration during transition time really difficult. And it results in some duplication for the families. And in my opinion, is less than family centered. These are just a few of some of the options for home and community-based services. They're similar to some of the other, or to ECF choices, the other waiver that is open. A lot of these are things that people, wouldn't have access to outside of a waiver. Typical insurance might cover a communication device, but it probably wouldn't cover much more outside of assistive technology, or definitely not respite or transportation, as far as community transportation anyway. At the beginning, I included this definition from the program of medically necessary. At the beginning, I thought this was going to be a really important rule that they were going to adhere to, but I have not seen that. They have really not used this in the way that I thought they would, but I still think it's important for parents to understand that this is sort of the basis of what the program revolves around. What is medically necessary is sort of the crux of what is allowed to be eligible or not. So as I mentioned previously, the most popular benefit in Part B is the HRA, or Health Reimbursement Account, by PayFlex. I think over 90% of people in Part B use this. It is based on IRS Publication 502, which is based around medical necessity. I often tell people to review that publication, which is just a list of different medical items and services, and whether or not they qualify for to be written off as a medical service for tax purposes, but the state is using it to sort of guide this program. I think they envisioned it as being much more technology friendly than it actually is. It's very documentation heavy. It's not very tech friendly. But for what it is the most flexible option available in the program. Unfortunately, it does function as mostly a reimbursement program. It comes with a debit card, but the debit card only works at limited point of sale machines. They must be coded as medical, dental, or vision. They hope to have pharmacies online next year. They had previously said by fall, but that didn't happen. So it requires the uploading of verification. So even if the swipe does go through, you still have to go back either to the website or through the app and upload the receipt and some information about exactly what it is. Sometimes they want an explanation of benefits from your insurer to sort of verify that you're not getting reimbursed by another source. So like I said, it's very documentation heavy. The app doesn't work a lot. It's an off-the-shelf product by PayFlex that Tennessee is attempting to use in a very customized way. So it's clunky and it's very unfamily friendly. but people are able to get some really, I think, good use out of it for their families. They pay a lot of frustration for it. But as far as the items and services that they're able to get, I think a lot more people are able to get workers because they can pay cash. They can pay whatever wage they want. Um, they're not relegated to the wages in this graph. As you can see by the purple line, that HRA account doesn't have set wages, whereas an agency and or consumer direction, the other possibilities do. Really, all of the red tape is taken away in this account. And besides the frustrating parts of the process, what you can get from it is really unparalleled. So there have been some really good changes to the program already based on family feedback and using the Technical Advisory Committee, which is a group of stakeholders, families, clinicians, state staff, and others. They were able to add feeding therapy to some of the eligibility criteria. Previously, it only had speech, OT, and physical therapy. We were able to establish that the therapy frequency and the level of care would be edited to reflect, the sort of access issues that families face. Most people seeking this program are having medical debts or doing so because their insurance doesn't cover their child's need. And we're in a pandemic. It's difficult to cover everything right now. So we wanted, they changed that to be prescribed therapies, not attended therapies. We were able to get a few more families placed on the group, which we always think is, paramount, having that lived experience to be in the room is the most important. They've really made some significant improvements in process in their application. At the beginning, it was taking, 120 days for an application to get through. I have seen some folks get through Part B in, a week or two. There were some significant glitches and errors in the original application. Those have been very reduced. They've come out with some plain language materials, and most significantly, they have eliminated the waiting list. They were able to do that, I think, to some degree also because so many people decided to stay in Part B and didn't choose Part A services, but also because they put some manpower behind it, and that's a good thing. There's still definitely some room for improvement. One thing would be to allow children with cover kids to enroll in Part B. At this moment, that's considered sort of double dipping, two forms of Medicaid, I guess. So they don't have access to any kind of HCBS if you have cover kids. Families in Part A would like access to that HRA benefit or non-traditional therapy items. That's a way that people are able to pay for things like hyperbaric oxygen therapy or equine therapy, some really different things that are not typically covered, but might be really important to a family in their decision making. We also think that it's really important that they create some type of manual or instruction guide around the HRA. Again, because it's an off-the-shelf product and not specifically for a Katie Beckett program, it doesn't come with any kind of clear information. And that's a big struggle for families, especially given how unfriendly it is to use already. It sort of results in a lot of people doing the same work over and over. So a simple manual or tip sheets would be great. Always increases in flexibilities in the ways that people are able to access the benefits are always important, and increases in transparency in how the program works. So, people need to be informed about all of their options in order to make decisions about what is best for their family in a timely manner. And of course, more family-centeredness. People who are enrolling in this program or applying to this program, they have kids with complex medical needs and disabilities. They're already juggling a lot. We spent a lot of time advocating at the design and onset of this program for, simple processes. And, one of the things that every family listening session that was said was, please do not make this process difficult. Every family said that they dealt with too much difficult paperwork, and that they didn't want that to be another burden. And I think we've failed on that. So those would sort of be our recommendations to make the processes smoother for families. This is our Facebook page if you're not already a member, or if you know other families who are in the program or who are thinking about applying or who should apply. Please share this with them. We do keep it to families only to foster a real safe space. It is a robust group, and there's lots of conversation and info sharing about, just how to make it work. And I think it's really grown to be a really good resource for getting recommendations on how to make things work or what's going on in the program right now. And this is our information and how you can find Family Voices and how you can connect with me in particular. I answer messages and emails all the time. People like to reach out to me, and I like to answer. So please feel free to send people my way if they are encountering any kinds of issues. There have been a lot of sort of ongoing problems with applications and with a couple of denial groups, I think, and we've been able to assist with that. So if you know anyone that happens to get stuck in those sort of areas, you can send them our way. If anybody has questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and talk away.
Oh, so we have several questions. So people are welcome to speak up or use the chat feature. I also have several questions that people have submitted that I'd love to walk through. One of the biggest questions that has come up kind of over and over again in our online groups and in our community is around just how to apply for it in the first place, right? Where to go to look for that, what they need to know in the application process itself to have the best chance to succeed.
So it's a rather involved process. You go to 10Care Connect, which is the portal in which anyone who's applying for Medicaid in Tennessee is going to use. The thing that I think that isn't clear is you want to apply as yourself, you the parent, because you're applying you are applying for your household. And then a few pages in, it gives you the opportunity to list your children and to mark which ones you want to apply for Katie Beckett. And then that will expand some more. It asks you a lot of questions about your household income and resources. However, you don't necessarily have to answer those when you complete that application. You can go back. One important thing to note that I think has tripped some people up, aside from the head of household question, is there's a little button will show up after you've submitted your application that says link case. And sometimes people didn't click that. And so they never started receiving notices into there's like a mailbox there on your portal. And often you'll get those notices much earlier than letters in the mail. 10Care is sort of notorious for having letter USPS problems. But if you don't do that, you won't see the messages to upload certain documents. And you could miss a memo that you're coming up on a certain timeline, and things like that. It basically is supposed to guide you to everything you need to know, and a chart should populate with each document that you need to upload, and you just click and put it in there. But a lot of times that isn't exactly how it works. Some people are alarmed by the amount of information it asks for, especially if they already know they're not going to qualify for 10Care. That is part of the process. You have to be denied 10Care to trigger the Katie Beckett part. So I sort of advise upload the smallest amount of information that you know is going to give them that information. If that's your your income, if you think your income covers, gives them enough information to disqualify you, then don't upload the rest of it. Just give them that. If you think, your bank statement will do it, then just give them that and stop and see what happens. I wouldn't necessarily spend all day, because they'll ask for everything: your retirement, the deed to your house, the deeds to your cars, everything.
Perfect. So just to clarify, so I know, because I know I've seen this question asked a lot. And so the application, it's not a unique Katie Beckett application. It is the same application that you would have used to apply for 10Care. Is that correct?
Correct.
Perfect. Awesome. And second, so another question that popped in was, you had mentioned that the child's premium is reimbursable in Part B. What if the family premium is bundled? Is it similar to how it's partially reimbursed, like in Part A?
Yes. So they would, if it is part of a bundle and not separated in any way, they will just divide it equally among household members and then say, okay, this much is the child's amount. That runs through a third-party company called PPL. They ask that you submit your proof of payment, whatever that is, your pay stub or whatever, every month, and then they send you a check.
Awesome. So another question that's come up a lot is, a lot of the families, specifically, in the GGs and the DSAMT community, we're dealing primarily with a Down syndrome diagnosis, and there is a myriad of other potential health conditions, but I know that we've heard from several families that they're intimidated by the term institutional care. And specifically for folks with just a Down syndrome diagnosis, or, potentially just maybe one or two other things combined with the Down syndrome diagnosis, is this a program that we should be applying for, and how should we phrase our needs?
Yeah, I think for sure Part B, it absolutely. Part A is definitely going to depend on whether or not you have additional medical needs. It is very specific um, with regard to, skilled interventions. Do you need a ventilator? Do you have a G tube? Do you have a catheter? Those sorts of things. Um, can you do things independently? Do you require hand over hand? Different levels of care of that nature. But Part B, frankly, some people have said recently that they thought anyone with IDD would pretty much qualify. I think people hear that word institutionalization and it sounds scary and they don't really know what it means. But it's just a hospital / insurance word. It really doesn't mean what we think it does, or what it conjures in our mind, I should say. In this case, it's really just talking about what level of care you might need, and would it be in a skilled setting?
Gotcha. So a Down syndrome diagnosis by itself would likely qualify a family for at least Part B.
Yes, I would apply. It's not a I mean, the worst thing that's going to happen is you wasted your time. I don't think for Part B it's a significant amount of time. Part A it's a more lengthy interview. But I mean, it's $10,000, right? And if you think about that, that might not sound a lot, but if you have a young kid, you could be in this for 15 years. That's a lot of money. That could make a potentially large impact on your family, depending on, what you were using it for, how long you were able to stay in it. So I encourage people to check out any kind of resources they can. It cannot hurt. That's what it's there for, and you should use it.
Awesome. We had a question from a mom who is new to Tennessee, and their son with Down syndrome will turn 18 when they become a Tennessee resident in the spring. So I guess there's two questions here. So first part is there an age limit to who can qualify for Katie Beckett in Tennessee? And secondly, what recommendations would you have for someone who is new to Tennessee, specifically for applying for this?
There is an age limit. When you turn 18, if you are already in the program and you turn 18, you can stay in the program while you are being determined for SSI eligibility. But they wouldn't enroll a new person who is 18. The other choice would be a similar waiver called ECF Choices, Employment and Community First. That waiver is actually open to any age. It doesn't have quite the flexibility that this program does. It doesn't have like that sort of directable pot of money in the same way that these two do, but it has many of the same options. It is more focused on employment, but you don't have to be pursuing employment to be in the program. It's just focused on community living and competitive employment. That program, unfortunately, has a significant waiting list. You may have seen in the news recently that Tennessee plans to use its ARPA money to open 2,000 more slots. That will be about half of its waiting list. And the spots that are available will be, its waiting list is a prioritized list, not a first come, first serve. But again, I always encourage people to apply for that because there are many different ways that people can get in. So don't be discouraged by what I just said, because there are lots of different priorities. 18 would be a really good age to be trying to get into that program, because it is focused on employment, even if he didn't want to be employed or she. Some of the priority categories revolve around that and revolve around sort of being at the age that you're leaving school services. We run some groups for that program as well. So if that parent wants to connect later, I would be happy to. I do know that there's one family that enrolled in Katie Beckett right before 18. So if that happens to be a thing,
Gotcha.
that is possible. They did get some benefit out of it.
Are there any other questions for people on the phone or have called in? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask directly.
Hey, Sarah, this is Daniel Cage. I appreciate you coming on to this call and explaining this. To give you a quick background, I'm a local financial planner here in Nashville, and our business, we're a little unique where we service a lot of families that have children with special needs, and this has come up a lot lately. I just shot you an email for us to connect, but for anybody that is wanting more information on this, or people that are about to go through the process, do you recommend them to come talk to you first and figure out if it makes sense for them to do it? Or
it might be helpful because some people have discovered afterwards that the part about the child's income and assets, and needed to move some money real quick to an ABLE account. And there are rules about moving money in tenure. So there's advantages to doing your homework before you apply. We can fix it, obviously, if it happens afterwards. I just had that happen last week to somebody who was actually already enrolled and didn't even know that. So somehow that got through. But yeah, I'm happy to talk to anybody who is considering and wants some advice.
Because we love our experts. Like we try to have a good grasp on what's going on with this stuff. But we really utilize people like you, and I just wanted to make sure if we run across this, that you're the kind of contact person for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good to hear that people are looking out for.
Yeah, and we've encouraged people. I mean, a lot of people just don't know about this program, and like you said, I mean, there's a lot of benefit to it, and those funds could be portioned somewhere else. So
I think a lot of people who are attracted to this have never received any kind of government benefit, so they just are not aware of all those layers of things. A lot of people in this program are very young, so they haven't started thinking about estate planning. All of those things just have not come into the picture yet.
Right. Well, cool. Well, I look forward to getting to connect with you, and I appreciate
nice to meet you.
You coming on here.
You too.
Sarah, so that exchange just brought up another question, and that is, if someone applies, and whether it's from a mistake or say they didn't move money around properly and they get denied, what is the process of reapplying? When would they be eligible to reapply? What does that look like?
So what are they denied for?
I guess it's sort of open-ended, right? For whatever reason, if they got denied, what does the next steps look like?
I would encourage them to either contact us or Tennessee Justice Center. We're kind of the folks that help people when they get denied see if it was appropriate or inappropriate. Lots of times there's something you can do about it. Sometimes not, but sometimes yes. A lot of times with this particular thing, there seem to be a lot of people who qualified for spend down. And I don't think a lot of families were aware that that was even a thing. But it doesn't seem like a lot of people, I think I was quoted less than 10% have been denied for medical reasons, or just not qualifying. So I think that shows that people are, it's reaching who it's meant to, or that maybe the level of care aren't as strict as we feared. But you can reapply at any time. You could reapply immediately upon receiving a denial. Sometimes we try not to have people have to go through that though, because it's a lot of work. A denial is usually a better path, a faster path, especially if you already had TennCare or were trying to move like from one product to another. Some people, they've had 3 children move from having from the Part C to Part A. So that's really like a first. So that means that those people, those children's, parents' income or assets were able to increase. So those people probably, were keeping their income low purposefully so that their child could qualify. And because of this program, we're able to allow it to increase. And now their child can access these other benefits because this program exists. And they're able to earn more money like a regular person. They don't have to keep themselves poor.
Awesome.
But yeah, so when you file an appeal for a denial, you have a 30-day window to do that. And you can call or you can fill out a paper and send it back. I usually call just because it's less work and it's quicker. If you're already receiving benefits of any kind, or if you appeal something once you're in the program, your benefits stay in place while that happens, which can be nice. You'll go before either an administrative judge or a general sessions judge. It depends how far into the appeal you go. It can be a lengthy process. It can be kind of overwhelming for parents because it's super legal. But lots of parents do represent themselves. TJC, the Tennessee Justice Center, they also represent a lot of parents. So I definitely encourage people to exercise their rights for sure, especially if they think that they should have qualified and they didn't.
Awesome. Are there any other questions for Sara? Well, awesome. Well, you all have her information here, as she's mentioned, that she's available for you to reach out. And so thank you so much, Sara, for sharing your wisdom on this and for all the work you've done in making this a resource for families.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. And so for everybody else, it's TBD on a December Lunch and Learn right now. So be on the lookout in your emails and on social media about that. But regardless, we'll be back here soon with more resources. And if as always, if GG's or DSAMT can be a resource for you in the coming months, please don't hesitate to reach out. So have a great rest of your week.